I would say quote unquote, kama unanunua.
Even on Facebook, we are thankful that you are always choosing us as the best way to start your morning, reminding you about Maroja Taxi. So Maroja Taxi are telling you, look. So you've listened to Spice and you've gone to your Apple App Store or Google Play Store or the other App Store and you've downloaded us. It's a blue one. And then you decide, I'm going to use Maroja Taxi for my next ride. If you use the code SPICE30, we are going to give you a 30% discount on your next ride. And then what's even more, at any point, if you load money onto your Maroja wallet, we give you 50% extra. So you load 100 bob city, you get?
You get 50% of that. We get 50.
Yes.
Nusu ile pesa umeweka unaongezewa.
Unaongezewa.
Yeah, so if you put 100, you get 50. So you now have 150.
Imagine.
Yes.
In that wallet.
Yes.
All right? And then you use it for your next ride. You can use it to pay. The good thing also about the Maroja app is the thing that we've talked about. You're able to select the driver that you want to use. So you choose the driver that you want. And if you really, really like the driver, like City likes a couple of drivers, then and next time he wants to use the same driver, you basically go, search, you pair, and you
so
you schedule your trip, you pair the driver. So you have your cab guy. And it works, huh?
It works, actually.
Very well.
It works.
Very good. Very good. Our next guest is here. We're here to talk about the economic outlook for 2024, revenue collections, tax, public finance management, debt repayments, and avoiding default. Jimi Wanjigi, businessman, politician. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
How are you doing?
To all of you. It's good to be back. Yeah, how have you been? How's the new year begun?
Well, here.
Yeah. I guess like all of us. Huh?
As you can see.
That says a lot. That says a lot.
You look well, Jimmy.
I'm well.
Good.
Had a good Christmas break. Didn't move from the city.
You took a break?
Yeah, I took a break.
From what?
From just general life.
And then you just chill?
Yes, just chilled with the family. Yeah.
It's good to see you. Should do that more often.
Yeah.
It feels good for you, see?
Yeah, it feels very good. Good to see
you are more positive in your outlook.
Oh, yes. About life in general, yes. Oh, yes.
Very good.
About Kenya, that we'll talk about.
Yeah. Tell him about it. We are positive about school fees with Kiwi.
So let's try. And Kiwi's helping us do that. So, take a chance on that.
Last time you were here, Jimmy, by the way, you promised that you were going to do some shopping for Kiwi. You got into the
by
draw.
the way,
you were not
you
lucky.
Never came back to me.
What do you mean we come back to you?
Yeah,
what?
you were supposed to give me some details when I went out.
All right.
Okay, let me give you.
So you're here
Please,
today?
Yes.
Give him the details.
We are going to start now.
Right,
yes.
With those details.
Start.
Agreed.
You see this thing? This tin of Kiwi with this new logo. You see the logo there? Yellow, red, all those happy colors? All right. So this is what we want you to go pick up. You and everybody else. Because, school fees is a thing this month. In the next couple of days, everybody's whinging and it's really a tough state. So Kiwi thought ahead and they said, you know what? We've been asking you all to step up and shine ever since we created this product. So here's another opportunity for you to do that. Pick up a tin of Kiwi, the new logo. There is a starburst with a code, *459 *5#. Also, under the code, under the lid, when you pop it, there's another code. And you're going to put that code in when you dial this. All right? You get airtime or data instantly. You can do whatever you want with that. Now, what you cannot do whatever you want with is this draw that you enter into, where 4 people every week are winning 35,000 shillings.
That's fantastic.
It's for school fees.
For school fees.
And it goes directly to school. So none of this business, I removed 2,000 because I'm... 35,000 shillings direct to school. You don't even have to worry about it. It takes over a number of things.
That's fantastic.
And you can actually win and give it to somebody else. Yes.
4 people.
4 people
every
week are winning.
enters a draw.
Every can enters a draw.
That we shall support.
So,
yep.
And then people are going to school. We're stepping up. We're shining. We're doing the thing.
Fantastic.
Very good. First test of the day, Jimmy, is your understanding of Swahili. City has the day's proverb. And this week, the proverbs are from the Republic of Kenya, the great Republic of Kenya.
Very good.
60th fastest growing economy in the world.
Kabisa.
Are you trying to set the tone?
Yes.
60 years old.
60 years
You're
old.
consistent. 60, 60.
Was it 60 years or 29th fastest? I think it was 29th.
60, chief.
29th growing.
Even if it's 29th,
You can say 6% GDP growth.
Yes, but I like the 60 because it's being prophetic.
Right.
Okay. Yes.
Oh, yeah. The proverb is in Kiswahili.
Swahili. Yes.
So, Jimmy, you first translate into English and then interpret it.
Nakusikia.
Asante sana kaka. Adui aangukapo mwinue.
Again.
Adui aangukapo mwinue.
The enemy falls, lift him.
Okay. Good translation. Now, tell us, what do you think it means?
When you fall, City, I lift you.
This man has just declared that his enemy. Jimmy, that declaration is that I'm your enemy, so I fall.
I'm pulling your leg this morning.
Of course you are. Of course you are.
You're my best friend.
Now it's my turn to laugh.
Oh, no. Oh, that's rich.
My best friend.
What do you think the Kenyans are saying? What's the deeper meaning of this proverb?
That when somebody is down, lift them, even if it's your enemy. Lift them.
Why?
Because we are called to a greater purpose than being vengeful, being unforgiving. So lift your enemy. Yes. Show him forgiveness.
Great. Great. Jimmy, the back page of the Nation today.
Yes.
Treasury borrowing up by 168 billion on low tax netted. The government is raising its borrowing target for the current financial year by 168 billion on projection of lower tax collection that has seen ordinary revenue forecast revised down by 210 billion shillings.
Are you telling me that the Treasury is admitting that the ambitious tax targets are off the mark? And that, as we had predicted earlier, the Laffer curve set in. You raise taxes to an extent that you get diminishing revenue, declining revenue, because you have taxed everybody out of the market. Are we seeing that admission? Had we not talked about this all the way back in, I think, August?
Probably. Or
July
probably
last
their
year.
target was unrealistic ab initio.
Yes.
You cannot raise 2 billion shillings in 1 year and then the next one you expect to raise 3 billion shillings miraculously,
Trillion.
growing it by 3 trillion. Just like that.
So what you're saying, I saw the president in his interview talk about over 70% of his revenue is going to debt. So what you're admitting, in fact, our figure now is about 78%. What you are saying is that this revenue is not forthcoming and that we are going to face the crisis we have been predicting over 1 year now, which is the crisis of default. If you recall, when we had our first session here, Ghana had defaulted at 70%. And it had very similar circumstances to ours. Very similar. And we have the head of state admitting that that is where we are today. Over 70%. Sri Lanka collapsed towards 90%. Lebanon, 80%. Argentina, 80%. Zambia, 80%. We can keep going on.
80% of what?
80% of revenue going to debt. So we are at a situation where it is inevitable that our predictions of debt default are coming. And in fact, I think it is now common knowledge in the market for anybody who is dealing first and foremost with domestic bonds. This year, because it's interesting to see those figures in the Nation. This financial year, Parliament passed loans, foreign and external loans of 313 billion. But a month later, the National Treasury gazetted external loans of 870 billion and domestic loans of 690 billion, bringing their total debt this financial year to almost 1.6 trillion. So I don't know whether they are trying to adjust themselves to slowly ease in some facts which are not quite true in relation to the budget. But what Treasury did and what the National Assembly did were two different things. So it's like we have two budgets. Now, if you see the domestic debt of 690, they have 374 billion shillings that is going towards redemptions. Those are rollovers of debt previously taken, maturities. Now, what I'm understanding, and I think this may have been triggered by a lot of our discussions, may have been triggered by the amount of tax revenue going to debt, the questions of insolvency. But one of the biggest triggers was in November, where Standard Chartered Bank said 52% of our bonds we are liquidating, even if it's at a loss of about 2 billion shillings. And it has continually done that. Other banks are following suit. So what is happening now is that this 374 billion in redemptions, people don't want to roll over. They want their cash. Bondholders, whether it's banks, insurance companies, pensions, individuals, want their cash. And that has precipitated a total drawdown on the overdraft facility at CBK, because when government does not have cash to pay those redemptions, it takes an overdraft at CBK.
And what's the limit at CBK?
It is 5% of the previous year's audited accounts. So that is 91 billion. Today, it is at 95 billion. It is at 95. So they have no more leeway.
And the redemptions are 378.
Yes, they have no more leeway. So I can tell you in the next month or two, as a maximum, you are going to have a crisis on domestic debt of untold proportions.
What would that mean? And this is the thing. You know, we talk about some of these things, Jimmy. We say, oh, domestic debt, and it sounds really fiscally
Complicated.
I mean, my goodness. So how does that play out? What do we see when we say we're going to have a crisis on domestic debt?
It means a default.
Meaning, how does the average Kenyan CT feel it? How do you feel it when you say that there's a crisis of domestic debt? Kenya has defaulted on its payment responsibility. What would that mean?
What does that mean? A pain of untold proportion. And it starts this way. The first thing with a crisis of domestic debt is a bank crisis. You have an immediate banking crisis. The banks are threatened with the possibility of closure. Now, in countries like Lebanon, in countries like Argentina, banks closed. Lebanon closed from 2019 until earlier last year. So it means that you have no access to your revenue of your money. You have no transactions you can do with local banks. That's a huge crisis. To save banks from closing, Ghana did what you call debt distress exchange. So they said, we are going to remove a certain amount of people's deposits, a certain amount of your bonds, of your debts, and pass it on to you and I, the sovereign. In Ghana, it was 30%. So if you had deposits in your bank of 10,000 shillings,
You give it 3.
you 3 went. If you had foreign exchange, it was turned into shillings immediately, and 30% was
went.
removed. Now in Ghana, it has gone to 35%. They increased another 5%. Now, it then creates what you call an inflation year in September.
How exactly does that help the government? You have reduced, essentially you've plummeted the value of whatever it is that I have by 30%. That's not even 30% not reduction, it's plummeting.
It's plummeting, yes.
Yes, so how does that help the government?
You see, who is the sovereign?
People.
So who is responsible for the debt? Right. So they come for you. Just like this government is coming for you for taxation. It's raising its tax because it has that debt to deal with. It comes for you. It's very simple. So the government is merely trying to survive. Merely trying to survive. And what happens is that this is done with other creditors, where they say you have both domestic and foreign debt. Let us see what the sovereign is prepared to swallow with their local debt. Then we, as IMF, as so on and so forth, will look to see how we can assist you with your external debt, which is them. All right? That's how it begins. Now, thereafter, I think it's important to understand, you have an inflation rate that goes to the extent, because nobody wants your currency. Even you don't want to hold on to your local currency.
Yes.
So in Ghana, the cedi lost value to about 50%. That was the inflation rate. 50%. So you tell me mwananchi and cost of living. All right? That means cost of living, whatever you can see today, will go up 50% as a minimum. But that didn't stop there. You immediately had a foreign and exchange rate problem. It lost its value to the extent of almost 80%. We are sweating today here of an exchange rate that in 1 year has lost 28% of its value. You imagine anything above that? And tell me about cost of living. What do you think the cost of petrol will be? What will you ever be able to afford here? So you are talking about a major crisis. You then have what you call a mobile banking crisis, an electronic crisis. So your M-Pesa will be deducted. Anytime you transact, whether you deposit or you send, you'll find you have the same 30% deductions. All right? And it may stop for a while. Because unless it is negotiated well enough, there'll be no backing in order to support those transactions. So you're talking about a major cash flow problem for each and every one of us in this country.
Unfolding.
Unfolding.
Armageddon.
Very, very, very soon.
And that's the outlook for 2020.
This very soon.
Yes, very soon. I mean, a lot of the people I'm talking to are predicting the next 6 months. I believe we will see a crisis in the next 3 months.
Jimmy, when you were here at the beginning, the first quarter of last year, I've been keeping quiet because what I'm hearing here today, I heard it Q1 last year. And you predicted that, you know what, in fact, by July, you guys, things will be so bad. It's a year later, Jimmy. It hasn't happened.
Yes.
Actually, it has.
And now you're saying it's going to happen again in the next 3 months.
Actually, it has. It has.
Those things specifically have not happened, City.
No, the magnitude that he speaks of, we have not experienced. But it's not just the clouds. We've actually had rainfall. You know how we say we're just seeing the impending rain and the dark clouds? The raindrops, and these are big drops, they've actually started falling.
So explain to me how they happened.
Let me tell you what I am
Has there
seeing.
been a haircut
Yes.
on your deposits in the
No,
bank?
No, wait, Eric.
Let me tell you what I am seeing, okay? Every time we have talked about cost of living and not being able to afford, and why this conversation has refused to move away, is because we keep being told our shilling has lost value, plus the cost of what we need to live keeps going up. And then we also see the so-called value of the shilling sliding against the other currencies that are supposed to be major currencies in the planet. But the signs that cause me the greatest worry is with our external debt. When I see the Bretton Woods institutions, the people, there's always news about them coming in to help us, coming in to do this. Now, the sort of help we get is not the regular loan where somebody is going to borrow, because it looks like we're not just limping. We have a problem and somebody needs to seriously come in to assist us, because without this, we're going to tumble. Now, that is my interpretation. Now, when that happens, I feel, how bad are things really? Because,
Okay.
Yes.
Good.
There is
Now,
no
let me compliment what CT has said. First and foremost, I don't recall July. I remember September.
Yes, it was September.
It was September. My target was September after the first budget of this regime. And you can see I am not too wrong. Tell me if any county has been paid their dues in the new budget.
What do you mean by dues?
You know, there is something called a first charge. All right? First charge items on the revenue are debt, county, and pensions. Since the new budget, I want you to tell me how much money has gone to counties, and it's a first charge before salaries of government. So government has defaulted on that expenditure. It has not remitted money to counties.
On time.
What do you mean on time? Find out how much has been remitted. Apart from salaries that have been going to counties, please tell me a lump sum percentage of the 385 billion that is supposed to be paid in this financial year as revenue share to counties. The president himself said they are delayed with salaries. They are rolling over and they are paying salaries very late. Okay? They are very clearly having a huge increase in pending bills. They are defaulting on pending bills. A lot of them. The same government came out and said they are going to pay the Eurobond. And they were going to pay part of it by December.
Yes.
Why have they not paid it? Because the people they expected to finance it, can you imagine we are financing the principal? We don't have the cash. The people who are expecting to finance it are saying we want liability management. Liability management is debt distress. And they started saying it in November. October, November, and December.
Who are these people?
Trade Development Bank, for example. Standard Chartered Bank. All right? Those, all of them, they tried to group them up together. And they said, we want liability management, which is distress, debt distress exchange. So it is here with us.
Okay.
It is here with us. We may be wrong in terms of a month or two, but I can assure you, just like CT has articulated, it is here with us. It is our clear and present danger. It is what is affecting each and every one of our lives every single day, making life unbearable for us.
Sure. I mean, I have a number of questions, but one of them is that, you know, we see what's happening. It's very clear. You don't have to do much to figure out how much this pinch is at the moment. And what you're saying is that it can get worse. But interestingly, not too long ago, the Deputy President said, you know, we've done everything that we need to do to remove Kenya from the brink of falling over the edge, right? And then the president, not too long after that, then actually said, you know what? We have stopped. We've put all the things in place to make sure that Kenya does not tip over towards a debt crisis. So as far as they're concerned, or it could be propaganda, but as far as they're concerned, everything that they needed to do to make sure that Kenya does not get to the place that you're talking about has already been done. It's like now the antibiotic has been administered and we're waiting for those few days where you're going to feel groggy and gross until the medicine starts to work.
Okay, are you telling me you believe them?
I'm just telling you what they said.
Okay, because I can assure you of something, that is very similar language to that was done by the Minister of Finance and the President of Ghana from May 2022, and they defaulted in December. Same language. In fact, when they were defaulting, they said it will not even harm the Ghanaian. Right? This is something the government can manage. That is similar language that you're talking about. But the reality, we are living it. The reality is the shilling is still losing value, as CT said. The reality is they are coming back and hitting us for more and more taxation. Now they even want to hit the farmer for every 100 shillings he earns. They want to take 5 shillings. They're hitting everybody more and more. And right now, the reality is that banks, large bondholders, small bondholders are saying, we do not want rollover. it is now too risky to hold on to government debt and government paper, which tells you the signs are there. The clouds are clear. It is about to rain.
Let's take a break. 28 minutes to 9. Jimi Wanjigi is our guest today. We're talking about 2024 and the economic outlook. He says, first quarter, first sign of default will be clear as sky. Okay. We'll engage more on this after this break. We'll be back shortly. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Hi guys, my name is Sheila Wakio, a travel and lifestyle content creator, and I am a millennial on the move. Yes, traveling is quite expensive. That's why most of the time I usually reach out to hotels before I travel. I have so many people who want to do this, but they're like, content creators mko wengi, kila mtu anafanya hii kitu. But I'm like, everyone has their own craft, you know, at the end of the day. So just do you, be yourself. We'll be like 5 people who would be invited to a hotel to create content, but everyone will come. Each one of us will come with like different ideas, you know. We can't always have the same ideas.
Nimeget airtime.
Airtel Money inakuokolea.
Really?
Ukiwithdraw chapa kwa Airtel Money agent inakurudishia hiyo transaction fee kama airtime.
Auntie.
Karibu.
Airtel Money makes your life kidogo better.
Most of the times we chase after money, but we don't need to chase after money so much. Definitely we all need money, but what we need to chase is giving value to the people around us. If people see value in what you are giving them, then they will give you money. You cannot buy land, I would say quote unquote, kama unanunua mkate. You must involve the services of a lawyer. If the investor is satisfied, remember in business we are told it is very much easier to get business from a client who is satisfied than a client who is actually disgruntled with your services. So we ensure that that client receives their title deed at the right time. The land registry cannot issue 2 title deeds. So whoever got the title deed first is the real owner of this particular parcel of land.
Njema, mchezo mpya kushinda hela umewasili. Tazama utuzwe ni mchezo rahisi na njia haraka ya kushinda hela ukitumia simu yako. Kuwa mmoja wa mamia ya washindi kila siku. Jishindie kuanzia shilingi 20,000. Ni rahisi. Deposit kuanzia shilingi 20 hadi 99 kwenye paybill number 145656. Account number KTN. Shinda sasa hivi. Draws na washindi kila hour. Kumbuka, deposit kuanzia 20 bob hadi 99 bob kwa paybill number 145656. Account number KTN. Na unaweza kujishindia hadi 1,300.
Everybody. Ati na papa go they make me shine. Everybody, let's go. Mafans wangu wamojisho baba. Watu wamepiga pesa worship unasema mimi nataka kuchezea Bwana chezea. Chezea Bwana chezea. Ati sababu yu mwema.
Fanta. Submit to the fizziest of fizz. Surrender to a bubbly bliss. Succumb to the flavor frenzy. Fanta. Indulge with a sip and snack.
KTN Home welcomes you to the ultimate entertainment extravaganza.
My hands, your waist, my heart.
We've got the hottest shows and the biggest stars.
You're my provider. You're my provider.
Get ready for a television experience like no other. The perfect balance of excitement, suspense, and pure entertainment. Back to school shopping week. Katika to 100% real deal at over 100 Naivas Kiloko. Twende back to school na Naivas Kikwetu Fiesta. Naivas saves you money. Sio stories za Jaba.
Things that you've said. Look at, okay, as a sovereign, the kind of money that I owe you, first of all, I'm rolling over the debt. Number two, I'm looking at the amount of savings that you have. I need to, shave off some of that money and to look into raiding people's pockets. And you said, this is what's going to happen before the end of 2023. Why do you think it did not happen before the end of 2023?
Well, with everything, you have a plus or minus error margin. But principally, the government just has defaulted on all its other commitments. I give you the example of counties. They have put out an image that IMF and World Bank are saving them. And these are false images because we know the reality of drawing down on that debt. Let me be very clear.
Mm-hmm.
I have been very clear about what you call odious debt. We have a very unique position. And I said, if this government continues to pay debt that is not legal, we are going to default. And they continue to do so. And that default is of their own making. Today, I will not blame the previous regime. I will blame this regime. It is of their own making. They have chosen this path of self-destruction.
Mm-hmm.
And that destruction means we are also going to get destroyed. But I want to tell them this, because this reality is coming. And this pain that is going to come to us, we are not going to accept or believe that they are the ones who are now going to be capable of taking us out of it. We will not. Ghana is probably the only country where head of state has survived in power out of default. And he survived only because he has 2 years, he has elections this year. He pleaded to try and exit with some honor. But every other country, they are removed. Even here, that is coming. And I say it is their conscious decision, a decision they have made themselves, that we will pay this odious debt and will continue sinking Kenya.
You've said something, and if you just make a linkage, and Kenya could default or headed down the road of default. And the reason for this is because Kenya is paying illegal debts.
Correct.
Okay. Now, it seems as though you've been saying these things over and over again. Over the weekend, CS for Lands, Alice Wahome, said a number of things. I don't know, were you in Nyeri when she was, were you there?
I was with her in Kiambu, in Kino, in Kikuyu constituency on Friday.
Okay, on Friday. And then she said, Jimi Wanjigi, keep doing what you're doing.
Yes.
We hear you. Continue doing what you're doing. It sounded as though, you can be in your corner saying what you need to say, but we're going to continue doing it because you're keeping people righteous. But what you're saying is beyond just holding a bullhorn in a crowd somewhere and hoping somebody pays attention. But we're talking about serious stuff here that would essentially sink this nation. So it's not a matter of keep doing what you're doing and somebody patting you on the back and saying, okay, keep people righteous. But saying, you actually look at what you've been doing, stop what you're doing. Otherwise, Kenya is going to the dogs.
Let me assure you of something here. And I don't see, in all essence, how we are such a unique country that every country that has reached this stage where you have all your revenue, literally almost all your revenue, going to pay debt, has had to default. But Kenya is so special. Somehow we are so special, we are going to avoid it. Right? And that default is extremely painful. Now, we have sung this for over 1 year, that this is the danger ahead. And it's because you are paying this debt. They have refused to listen. So they are consciously taking us to that situation of collapse. They are, in fact, with a lot of zeal, making sure that they come and cause us even more pain by taking more and more of our money in taxation, frustrating every business you can think of, every producer you can think of, right? To pay this odious debt, this illegal debt, and still collapsing us. They are making that conscious decision. Now, I want to tell you something. We will give them no time because we are getting there. I can tell you here, we will give them no time to imagine that we believe they can get us out of it.
So what will you do?
Oh, no government, I'm telling you here, other than Ghana the other day, stays in power. And you will remember this. You know, these are extraordinary circumstances, City. Extraordinary circumstances in this country. We have never been here before.
No, we haven't.
And I can tell you, this government has refused to rise up, as Ndu is saying, to these extraordinary times
Is it capable?
and make difficult decisions.
Is it capable?
No, it is not. It is not.
What would happen if we refuse to pay the odious debt?
What immediately happens, and I was suggesting this to somebody I was with from government a few days ago. What immediately happens is the following. Is that you say, we can afford to pay what is not odious. That one, put it aside, we are going to pay it. But we need to audit it. Because as I also have said from before, we are clearly, in my view, have overpaid this debt. So we need to have checks and balances on this, our figures. So we need to say what is legitimate, pass through our parliament, is in our budget, we shall pay. What is odious, we put aside. And investigate its payments and declare it odious. Now, what will happen is that you have a crisis, but for a much shorter period. With a decisive leadership, within a matter of no more than 6 months, this matter will be sorted out for most Kenyans. But we don't have a decisive leadership. We have a leadership that is frightened to make this decision. We have a leadership that is captured by interests of this odious debt. We have a leadership that has refused to rise up to the occasion of these extraordinary circumstances.
Let me ask another question, Jimmy. What percentage of our debts is comprised of the odious debt?
In our view,
Yes.
70%.
Hey.
Oh, Jimmy.
Yes.
7 trillion shillings.
70%, yes.
That
Let
is
me
7 trillion.
update you. Let me update you. When we started screaming about debt,
It was 9
it was
trillion.
at 8.4. July 2022. Today, January, it is at 11 trillion. Even after paying 1.9 trillion, 1.3 up to 1.3, 1.4 up to July, so August, and another 500 between then and now. So we paid about 2 trillion, and it is now at 11. A lot of that is because of loss of exchange. All right, I think you have 1 trillion something because of loss of exchange, and that is not going to change.
No, it's
But you
actually
can
going to-
see
it's actually
the
going to go to
trajectory.
worse.
The trajectory keeps going like this, and yet we are still being taxed, and yet it is doing more and more of our revenue
So
as
you-
a percentage of its return.
Your estimation is that 70% of that 11 trillion
Yes.
is odious debt.
Remember-
odious debt is debt that is taken without the authority of the sovereign,
Yes,
the people.
and
of the
I'm
country,
trying to combine it
or
with
going to the
interest and very
benefit of
many
the
things.
people.
I think you, when I was last here, I gave a very clear figure of what is deficit, which is debt. I told you we had done the accounts of the country. So you take our revenue. How much revenue had we collected, tax revenue actuals, over the last 10 years? It was 13.3 trillion. What was our expenditure? Our expenditure, we categorized this way over the last 10 years. This is up to June 2023. We categorized this way. Development was 6 trillion. What was the county expenditure? Over 10 years. What were the salaries over 10 years? What were the operations? What were the pensions over 10 years? We removed debt payments. And that came to 14.6 trillion. So our deficit was about 1.2, 1.3 trillion over 10 years. Do you know how much we borrowed? 7.7 trillion.
For what?
6.5 trillion above what was required, which is like 60 years worth of debt in advance that we pay today. It was not needed. That is the odious debt. What was it needed for? What did it fund? It didn't fund any shortfall that we had. So what was it? Now, there's no way we can pay it. There's no way we can ever pay it.
But the journey for refusal to pay this debt that has been incurred to by the government to whoever has lent us the money has to start somewhere.
Yes.
Has to start by looking at, first, was it legally acquired?
Correct.
Through legal instruments?
Correct.
So were there legal instruments that were breached in the acquisition of this debt?
Absolutely. There were legal instruments that were continually breached.
Which?
It was not in the budget. It was never passed by parliament. It was never in the appropriations bill, which is the budget. It never went as a line item to be expended for any project in this country, because you can only borrow for development. In the short term, you can borrow from the overdraft and bills, which are 1 year.
Yep.
Full stop. Right? So these bonds, for example, that the banks have given the government, what project did they fund? Because they are medium term to long term. What have they funded? Nothing. They don't exist. What did the Eurobond fund? Show me where it is a line item in the budget. We came here and we explained to you and showed you what SGR was about.
So the instruments that we use
to
ascertain all these things, Jimmy, number one would be the budget making process, and
Yes.
this is
The
Parliament.
law. The law.
Okay.
The law.
If it has not gone through Parliament, then it has. This is an expenditure that has been made without the authority of the sovereign.
Correct.
Through their representatives in
Correct.
Parliament.
Correct.
Then number two, lack of tracking that this has gone to the benefit of the people would be the Auditor General's reports.
Correct.
That would highlight that I do not see
what it was expended for.
Where this money has gone to.
Correct.
Do we have those corresponding reports from the Auditor General that actually show there's a 6 trillion shillings here that has not gone to be expended in accordance with the law?
I can
that then
assure
can
you-
be used to say this is odious debt. Or do we just use our own calculations?
No, I can assure you these were their records that we have looked at.
Whose
And
records?
all we removed, the budget, the treasury records and the Auditor General. All we have removed is debt payments. Remove all the debt payments. That's all. And that is the figure. And what we have done is something very unique. It's called a forensic audit. A forensic audit is not just a sabu. It is to look at the law and where it has been flouted. You look at every expenditure in relation to the law, the Constitution. I'll give you an example, because we've done it also with the housing levy, which is a very current debate. Right? You tell me where Parliament has approved the housing levy, Article 220(221) of the Constitution, which says expenditure and revenue estimates. Show me the revenue or expenditure estimates of the housing levy. It doesn't exist. Show me in the appropriations bill where the housing levy is there. It doesn't exist. Show me in the Ministry of Housing where there's a line item called low-cost housing development. Doesn't exist. Does not exist. The only place housing levy exists is in the finance bill.
Is in the collection.
As a levy in the collection. But to be spent on what? Estimated on what? There's not even an estimate. In the revenue estimate, they should have done, we expect to collect so much. Like now, fuel levy, it is there. It does not exist. So this government is perpetuating the things of the past. Are you telling me that it is legal? It is not. A judge called Majanja even gets rights and says, okay, they didn't put the revenue estimates, but it's in the appropriation bill, and even quotes the appropriation bill. Where? Which appropriation? The one he's quoted, it doesn't exist. It does not exist.
What do you mean?
It is not there.
And so what you're
The
saying,
one he quoted is not there.
Let's look
So
at
we are saying, what is this fraud?
so let's look at
From Parliament
Yeah.
to the executive to the judges, What is this fraud?
Jimmy, let's look at the other side of it, because we're saying that it does not exist because it is not there. Now, we're not looking at a vacuum or an empty black hole, right? We are looking at a system whereby anything that is going to be borrowed, spent, will then actually show up.
It's called public finance management.
Exactly.
But where does it show up?
So we're
How
saying,
is the control of budget, for example, removing that money for housing finance?
Sure. So we're saying that if it then were a part of this appropriations, public finance, if it was there, and if it was if it followed the due diligence, that it would actually then be there
Yes.
for everybody to see.
Yes.
So because it is not there, cannot
Yes.
be found, according
Yes.
to what you're saying,
Yes.
then there's something hodgy-podgy going on.
Correct. So 9 billion has been collected on housing. How has it been spent? Because they say it has been spent. How has it been spent?
Has it?
There's no line item. There's no line item.
Has it been spent?
That's what they say. They say there's buildings going on. They have workers on the ground. It has been spent. How has it been spent? This is the impunity and the illegalities which we are talking about. They are still being perpetuated. Still being perpetuated. And it is illegal. Okay? Now, why should we as Kenyans support anything that is illegal? In Malaysia, when this was brought out with the 1 MDB, which was $3.9 billion, they went to London, court, and they said, I'm sorry, this thing is fake. It was refunded by Goldman Sachs in full. The tuna bond, same thing. They had their own courts in Mozambique, and they sorted it out. Here, we are going to court to get clarity, and we are being called saboteurs. People are being called saboteurs. And judges are being called, I don't know what names. The law is not being followed in this country. It is becoming a huge fraud and has become a huge fraud. What a government is doing, and I say government because I want to include parliament in this too, is illegalities that are costing and collapsing the economy of this country. Untold proportions. Untold proportions.
Okay, Jimmy, back to my question. When we declare odious debt, right? An odious debt cannot just be declared because somebody is holding the sword and is the president in State House or any other office for that matter. There has to be something that supports it, that then goes and says, we are going to breach this contract that we entered into as the government of Kenya and you who lent us this money because of these other conditions, right?
Yes.
Now, that's what I was saying. For us to get to that level, we have to establish that indeed this is odious.
Yes.
It was illegally procured.
Yes.
That means Parliament was not involved. The people of Kenya were not involved.
Yes.
And number two, even after it was procured, it was misappropriated. It did not go to any project that can be quoted and said, this is where the money went to. It did not benefit the sovereign. Right?
Yes.
And you're saying, as a government, the one thing that you expected the government to do was to declare this odious debt and say, because of this, we cannot track it, we cannot pay it, let's have a conversation with you. We don't know this debt.
Yes. Absolutely.
How would you get there if you were the president? How would you get to that point?
I can tell you.
What would you use
Yes.
as your evidence
Yes.
that can stand before international law to say, we, the people of Kenya, are not going to pay you the money that you're claiming we owe you?
I, in the run-up to running for president last year, did a forensic audit. I bothered to do some homework. And I believe I did the first forensic audit of our national debt. And we did it thoroughly. I went on TV. I bought advertising space to ring the bell on the danger. Up to date, no government official has called me to ask me, where is that forensic audit? We look at it. And it's the first ever. It's not like the audit of the Auditor General. This is a forensic audit by a forensic auditor, qualified. So we have got the evidence that it is fake. I came here And I explained to you very simple figures of a project called SGR.
Okay, let me stop you there because you've started answering my question, but then you're digressing a bit. Had you gone through into the presidential election, had you been elected as the president of Kenya, with your forensic audit booklets,
yes,
the huge voluminous books that you have, all right? What would you have done next?
Oh,
so yes, you have these audit. You have the audit.
I would have made.
What
I would have made a very clear decision.
Check me technically.
Yes.
What would you have done?
I would have very clearly said, this odious debt, put it aside. We're not paying it. We're not paying it.
Yeah, but Jimmy, it can't
Right?
just be because.
And all those
you have
who
done
believe, all those who believe that it is payable, come here and tell us which law you followed. Right? Because it's called buyer beware. Which law did you follow to give Kenya this money? Show us what it has funded.
Essentially, tell us why it is Kenya owes this money and why they should pay
Yes.
for it. But let me ask this question.
And
to
I
you.
can assure you something, CT. If you get into what has really happened between Treasury and Central Bank, you'll find that it funded nothing. It has just been something called a Ponzi scheme.
I want to ask this question.
So what would you have done? So I still haven't.
I clearly would not pay it.
No. Eric, are you asking what process?
Yes, I want to know the
process?
process.
What
I
would
mean,
you do?
You can't just wake up one day because I'm the president. I said, "Oh, by the way, Kenya is not going to pay any more
Because we
debt."
didn't
It's
borrow
because
this.
I don't see how you.
No.
And if you
Is there a
think
process to
if you
this
think I owe
declaration?
you, come.
You know, there is what is called threshold for odious debt. And I would say that the forensic audit we have done, which we would like adopted by the different government agencies, that is something you give Auditor General to say, even commission your own forensic auditor, because it's not a forensic auditor. She's not a forensic auditor. Right? And say, please, let us make sure it concurs. You've had the COB on this show, said, we don't even know what this debt is anymore. We don't even have a debt register. It's amorphous inside there. You tell people go inside because now you have the power to tell people to go inside and verify the forensic audit we have done. Once it is verified, because it will take a very short time, these are numbers that are open for everybody. Once it is verified, I can assure you of something. We would not pay the odious debt. And it would bring our tax to revenue targets in terms of how much tax we are taking to pay debt to no more than about 30%.
Yes,
And that would free Kenyans. Free Kenyans. We would reduce this taxation, okay, and institute what is called supply side growth, where government is not the driver of everything. Right? The
other
private
quarters.
sector will then have access to a lot of credit, cheap credit, to do things. And I'll just
let's do the news first.
Okay.
And then stay on. Let's do the news first. Jimi Wanjigi stays on. Let's hear what he explains in terms of our odious debt and our